Brad,
Troy,
how are you?
I'm doing well. Life and Grace podcast.
Woo! Life and Grace podcast from the back porch
Yeah.
of your house.
Back porch. We finally got some weather that's not in the hundreds. So we thought, you know what? We need to get outside a little bit and we can have a cigar. And, there might be a bird fly by once in a while or a dog bark or somebody doing something else.
Yeah, left side of the picture, your right side's got a bird feeder hanging. They might be able to
There you go.
pick up from time to time.
Okay. Well, we'll zoom in on that, especially if a bird shows up.
But bird shows up. There's a bird feeder over there. So
yeah, so we thought we'd get outside finally, since it's at least tolerable, though it is a little bit humid. So we might get a little sticky too, or shiny, and we'll have to do a makeup break till we can powder our faces.
The top of my head, is going to see lots of beads of sweat coming down. It's warmer on this side of your deck than that side
because of no wind.
The
right?
wind was kicking, but
There's
probably
no
sounds
wind.
better over here.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, but this is, I like old stuff, so this is part of things that I bump into, doing estate sales, garage sales with my wife, and we both like that and share that hobby together. So this is some of the stuff that we've collected over time, as well as the notorious black stone grill, right? Hey, it's a trend. You got to have a black stone. But
yeah, I haven't done that trend.
I haven't yet. You went a little more posh. You went with the electric.
About that. It's a charcoal grill.
Yeah, but it's highfalutin.
Fan.
It's
a highfalutin charcoal fan that I can buy a flat top to insert on top.
Oh, neat!
I can take out the grill and slap the
Really?
griddle in.
Wow,
yeah.
You gonna do that?
I was thinking about it. I was telling Brandy, it's like $130.
Is it hard to interchange them out?
Nah. Didn't look to be.
Well,
but nonetheless.
What else been going on? Anything? Obviously, you got the stuff to fix your grill, by the way.
I do have the stuff to fix my grill. I cooked my grill, which does sound kind of weird, but when you don't clean your grill properly, the grease that's left behind when it
caught fire.
When you crank that thing up to 500 degrees, ooh, and the grease catches fire, it gets a lot hotter than 500 degrees.
Ooh.
And the flames are rough.
Yeah. So how did that happen? Is there not a drain box for the grease or a place for the grease to go?
There's a place for the grease to go, and the guy that cleans the grease just kind of took a shortcut that particular day and thought, it'll be good.
That guy.
Who
was that?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Good thing he's not paid, but
right.
Yeah. So he just, then when I went to go crank it up to kind of burn the grill a little bit, the grates, I thought, I'll crank it up to 500. You guys ever, if you have that opportunity, you just crank it up, burn off the extra.
Right.
I went out there to go, okay, I'm going to turn it down. I opened up the top and flames were just shooting. I was, whoa, put it back down, shut everything off, and then waited. And then when I went back, I noticed that there's a little, it's not a button, but I guess it's a button. I don't know.
Safety type thing?
Yeah, your door's closed, your door's open. It's a little deal, a little popper that tells your grill when the door's open or when the door's closed. When the door's open, fan's not running, as the same, it's different. And then when you close it, everything kicks back on. Well, it melted that sucker. It melted. That's how hot it was. So anyway, I got new ones, and I got a little new wiring harness to replace the wire. So we'll be good. I just haven't done it yet. It's been too hot to grill.
This thing's got a little grease catcher in it too. Yeah. That if you do a whole thing full of hamburgers, that thing gets pretty close to full. My concern is being on this deck, of course, that something hot.
It's a fire hazard.
So you just can't walk away from it when you're cooking.
No.
That's my only rule for myself, and I'm gonna make that a rule for everybody else. Is like, if you're gonna cook on this thing, you got to be with it 100% of the time.
Well, luckily you got a little window here too. If you had to pop in real quick, you can keep an eye on it. But that's still, you're still too far away.
Well, and I hang up like tin foil behind it, at least where, obviously it was more for the grease to stay off the wall.
I don't think fire marshal's going to approve with anything
No.
we're saying.
Oh, well, it does
Where's your
create
fire
a little
extinguisher?
barrier. At least it keeps the grease off the.
Where's
off
your
the
fire
thing.
extinguisher? Is it hanging out here?
No,
Probably ought to
I
be.
need to get one.
We probably both should have one.
I probably have 4 or 5 fire extinguishers around the place, and I couldn't tell you where one of them was. So if there's a fire, I don't know.
Or how old they are.
We need to. I mean, the whole
They're
idea.
probably not maintained.
Right. Remember when you were a kid and you went to school and they did those tornado drills and bomb?
Sure,
I guess
fire
everybody
drills.
go into the hallway and bend over and kiss your own butt goodbye.
Yeah,
because
tornado drill. Get
End of the
outside in
world.
the hallway.
Yeah, so we did all those drills and things, but we neglect that at home. I've never really,
You're supposed
really had that, but I know you're supposed to. But we always told our girls, like, take this, throw it through the window, get out there, get far away from the house.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll be along
I
shortly.
think we had one or two because it was like an assignment the kids had. You have to bring home a report that showed what your fire drill was. What do you do in case of a fire?
See,
so
now
we manipulated that to show what we would do.
Right.
Oh, I just had.
What if one of the kids came back and said, "Well, we'd have to go buy a new tent." Our camper Wouldn't withstand a fire. So so you see the problem in that particular. Did a fly go in your beer?
I'm looking here at my drink, and the fly just died.
I think you can get him out of
my
there,
drink.
and it's
I
still
can,
fine.
but it's irritating.
Well, you got to be careful
Watch
when you
him
do
suffer.
it.
Oh my goodness!
You're gonna lay eggs in there.
Yeah. So hey, Brad, how are you? Other than that, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today?
Well,
where are we going? What do you think we're going to talk about today?
Well,
what do you want to talk about today?
Yeah. Well, I've got some thoughts about something that, when I was younger was like kind of I was uncertain about, and it was as I started kind of gaining curiosity about my faith, which is obviously Christianity. I didn't really know, like, okay, I was curious about it. I started learning about this guy, Jesus Christ, and who he was and what that meant, him being here and the sacrifice that he endured on the cross and the 3 days he spent in the tomb and what happened while he was there and the resurrection and him, reappearing to the apostles and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's a lot, but as I started kind of looking into it all, I started like realizing like, this all happened, there's so many accounts of Jesus Christ. I mean, obviously when he was here as a man, there's no doubt that he existed. I think whether or not he was the Son of God is the question that everybody really, really concerns himself with. Yeah. But then I'm talking more along the lines like what he reappeared to people after he died on the cross, and all these apostles who basically Peter denied him, and all the other apostles really kind of just stood idly by while Jesus Christ was crucified, and after walking with him and seeing him perform miracles and doing all this stuff, they still had all these questions. But then as I started like researching and asking a lot of questions myself, and then as he reappeared, there's a lot of accounts of that as well, him reappearing to the apostles. And as he reappeared, something changed in those guys where, where they were willing to run and hide when he was crucified.
Right.
Now after his resurrection and him reappearing, then all these guys, they went to their deaths, professing that Jesus was who he said he was.
Correct.
So what was it that changed from the time he was being crucified till the time he reappeared in the minds of all the apostles? And that to me was the most compelling evidence as I researched. That was the most compelling evidence that Jesus Christ was not only here on this earth as a man, but that he was the Messiah, and that he was crucified, and he rose from the dead. And the fact that he reappeared was pretty evident in the fact that all the apostles changed so significantly in regards to how the stance that they were willing to take for Jesus, and they all became Christ followers after his death. to the point where there was a lot of persecution and a lot of the Blue Jays are going nuts.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of persecution as well as some of them put to death, professing that Jesus is who he said he was. So that was where kind of I wanted to go with this topic and
Okay.
and kind of share my beliefs in regards to that and kind of how to go about making that decision. We got hummingbirds that are just
Whoa.
putting on an air show here. It's
Just
awesome.
flew through there.
Blue Jays yelling. So I like feeding birds, so we're going to get a lot of animal noises. I apologize in
And
advance.
it's not just Brad.
No, I might grunt once in a while. But that's so and you have made the same decision in your own life. So
Right.
what was the overwhelming thing that made you go,
I think we've kind of talked about this before. I'm not saying that we don't. My experience was slightly different because I grew up with a very emboldened, a very 100% sure of Jesus follower in my grandmother.
So you never had a doubt
So
really because you saw her confidence. But
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of the same as anybody else that grew up the opposite of that. If you grew up with a family of atheists, you kind of mold yourself into that. Well, I'm an atheist too. I don't believe that crap
until you
because my
find out,
parents-
on your own.
My parents are non-believers, and I listen to them because these are your first teachers. That's who you model. If you respect your parents, you kind of look at what they do and you follow suit, at least for a while, until you maybe start to become a teenager, and then you start hearing some other things through friends, these days it's social
Internet,
media,
yeah.
it's everywhere. But when we were kids, it was just going to school and hearing some, talking to your friends, and maybe they have some different perspectives. But I grew up, when I was going to church from the time I remember. I don't remember not going to church as a kid. I got baptized the first time, I think I was 5, maybe 6. I'm pretty sure I was 5. And I still remember being baptized because it was just somewhat embarrassing because of the fact that I was in my underwear. It wasn't like a congregation of people there, at least.
Tidy whities? What
Yeah,
kind of
tidy whities back then.
So they were
Fruit of the Loom,
see-through after you got out of
tidy whities. I was in and out pretty quick, but I remember it. And Jim Cole, the pastor that we had, it was also the pastor that married my Brandy and I. He baptized my little brother, who's 2 years younger. So I was 5 and he was 3. It was after my dad died. My grandmother wanted us to be baptized, and we were going to church anyway. And where was my belief? I believed, sure, absolutely, sounds good. I know Jesus. I know all those little stories. Those are cool. David and Goliath and all that stuff. I was taught all that as a small kid, and never had a belief that God didn't exist. I never had a belief that Jesus wasn't real. Now, did I live my life as I got older to what Christians should, or to follow that belief full-heartedly? No. As I got older, I don't know. I probably fell into that normal secular, we're just going to have fun, be kids, do stupid stuff, but I always had that belief that this was all real. So I don't know, where that leaves me. So I didn't have an aha moment in that way, but I've had aha moments to where I go, man, you're living like an idiot. Why are you doing this? This isn't how you should be living, because you do have this ultimate belief system. And if you ultimately believe in heaven, you're not going there.
Right.
Doing what you're doing, not just what I'm doing, but because my heart wasn't there. So you can say you're a believer, but if your heart has that nastiness in it,
Yeah.
I don't think you really are.
Right. Well, nobody really knows, obviously, except God, and that we'll leave that up to Him.
Yeah, he's the ultimate judge.
But the reason I wanted to kind of kind of hit on this particular topic is because I didn't want to like try to sit out here and prove to anyone that Jesus was who he said he was. I mean, I think everybody needs to do their own research on that. You know,
yes.
I don't want anybody just to say, "Hey, Brad believes it, so you know it must be real," because obviously that's not how I came to that place. You know, so I did have people in my lives who had a similar belief system that I saw and I watched, and they made me super curious. So I started, you know, asking questions and started doing research and reading and so I got to this place where I realized like you know there's some merit to this, you know, who Jesus said he was, and again what I just said about how the apostles reacted when he reappeared versus prior to his crucifixion. And you know, it just led me to a place where I was like, okay, I think I want to move forward with this, and I didn't really know how to take the next step, and that's what I wanted to kind of talk to today about, just what it means to ask Christ into your life, and how you get there, and kind of how you go about, you know, the specific prayer that you need to pray to ask him into your heart. And with that there's no scripted version. You know, it's an intentional decision, and it comes because we all at some point in time we all come to the end of ourselves, you know, and maybe it happens through trial, maybe it happens through you just realization of unfulfillment, or you know, there's a lot of reasons why people choose to pursue something a little bit more purposeful. But if I get slammed in the side of the face with a hummingbird,
those two hummingbirds, they're right there.
I think they're pretty they're pretty. I don't see them crashing.
No,
they're
not into you.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's where I was. That's where I was in my life, and it didn't happen overnight. It just happened through, you know, kind of trial and error. Kind of all of a sudden, I'm curious. Kind of now, I'm going to seek, you know, more information, and then now I've been a Christian since 1993. But I made a decision in spring training when I wasn't in Major League camp, but I did go to a Bible study, which was part of what's called Baseball Chapel. And in that Bible study, there was a couple of people leading it who led us all in the sinner's prayer, which is essentially where you say, hey, you know what, I keep screwing this up. Yeah. And I'm done. You know, I just can't do this anymore on my own. You realize Christ was sent here for the reason of atonement, for sacrifice, for our mishaps, you know, for our mistakes, and learning to accept that was hard, you know, because I was kind of a screw up as a youngster, you know. So to willingly say, okay, God, I realize like you're who you said you were, and I want you to take control over my life, and that's when, you know, I made that decision, and the prayer goes something just like that, where you say, God, you know, I'm at the end of my rope, at the end of myself, and I want to ask you to come into my life, to take control. I want to profess that you're who you said you were, and glorify you in my decisions, and then you grow over. Then it becomes a relationship. Christ sends his counselor to live in you, which is the Holy Spirit. And, you know, the rest is history. You just continue to build a relationship like you would with anybody else, through reading, through prayer, through, you know, fellowship, through worship, however, you know, it's just you're hanging out with God. And I find myself all the time, you know, morning, noon, night, in any scenario, in any situation, just, you know, taking a 2-second break and talking to God about a certain situation. You know, it just becomes a part of who you are. And it wasn't miraculous. It wasn't like this aha moment, as you say. Yeah. It was an aha decision. I think the decision was my conscious effort. But once I asked God into my heart, I mean, to me, it was more of a process. I do think that there might be some aha moments for some people, but it's still a process. I'm still, you know, that's in 1993. What is it? What is that? That's 30 years.
30 years ago.
30 years, and I'm still growing and still building that relationship, and I still screw up all the time. And so I just want everybody to know, as we're sitting here discussing this, like it's there's never a right time, you know. It's like God will meet you where you're at. It doesn't matter how good or bad you think things are going. He'll meet you where you're at, and it's just more importantly that you think about things from a perspective of eternity. And that's what really kind of intrigued me, is like, what if when I die, what if it's not just the end, What if when I take my last earthly breath, what if all of a sudden I appear in this place called heaven or this place called hell? And if that's the two choices or two options I got, I think I would rather choose heaven. So, and what that entails is simply that relationship that I just described.
Yeah.
And then of course you get closer to Christ and you start to crave the things that please him. And so the works that people discuss, they're not really works, because if you want to please God in the decisions that you make, then you want to do those things anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these guys are going nuts back and forth here. The the idea, I know a lot of people, that have issues with believing that there is a God, automatically just start talking about what hell on earth this is, and all the evil that's out and about throughout our world that we're living in, and all the trials that people have to go through, and the babies that are dying and that are starving, and the earthquakes and all the stuff. That's their answer as to why there's not a God, which seems kind of crazy, because basically what they're saying is there can't be somebody that's ultimately good because of all the evil that is in the world. Well, it's not just me, but at the same time, if there was no good, how do you know there's any evil?
You can't inherently have one without the other.
I mean, if there's no light and then there's darkness, how do you know you got to have one, you got to have the other. They are if you want to, the yin and the yang, I guess. They are the opposites of one another to a degree. So to say that there is evil is really an admission that there is good. Where does good come from? Good was not something that was in a big bang and just boom, and here we are through evolution. We have now good and evil. That is not how it works. That is not something that's I believe that scientists can prove is possible. So there is that good. Who is the good? We believe that it's God. We believe through Jesus, as Brad said, that he came in on this earth as a representation of the Son of God, who is also God. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Those three in one. We believe that, and he's the creator of this earth as well. He was here from the beginning. So through Jesus coming on earth, showing us basically as Christians how we should be living. That was one of the main purposes of him being here for the time that he was. Otherwise, he could have just came, somebody could have grabbed him, slapped him on the cross, and killed him, and he could have died and been resurrected. Sure, that's a part of it. But at the same time, while he was here, he spent this time ministering. He spent that time when the New Testament shows us through his life while he was here how we should be living. So if you just take that and you go, look at this guy, show me where he did anything wrong.
Well, he didn't. And that's like you said, that was the model. That was why. That's the model. That's why he lived as a man on this earth, and also fully God, fully man. But he chose that, and because of what you just said. I mean, he wanted people to see his life and his ministry, and and even though he walked day in and day out with this group of guys, they still had trouble believing. So it's not hard to wonder why somebody else who didn't experience that has trouble with it.
Yeah, and it's heavily documented how many times that the apostles didn't believe that Christ could do what he was doing over and over and over again. They felt that they were full-on believers and they're followers of his, and they were even given the opportunity to heal as well. And I don't think they handled that all that well. It was kind of a weird thing for them as well.
Well, they were vying for the next in line. There's a lot of stories of the apostles.
Arguments.
Yeah, they had all kinds of arguments, like who's the best apostle, who's the favorite.
Look at James and John. Their mother came to Christ and said, "Hey, I want them on your left and your right."
Right. Yeah, and they're like, "It doesn't work like that."
I don't think they could. I don't think they could.
No, No.
They're not going to be able to do what I'm getting ready to do.
No, and they're not going to do it without sinning either.
Right.
So I think obviously, the human side came out in all these guys, and Jesus was just a model of how to overcome it, because he never sinned while he was here, but inevitably he ended up dying on the cross, and not for anything that he did, though he was accused of wrongdoing.
Correct.
He didn't do anything, but the
Man-made
reason he did it
manipulation.
was on purpose, because he knew that he needed to be crucified on the cross to atone for our sin, and the stuff that he went to was because of us, not because of him.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I ended up making that decision in my own life, it was pretty liberating. I mean, I didn't feel pressure to do it necessarily. It was more like I just was like, I did all these things, as a young man. I partied, I chased women. I did a lot of things, and I met a lot of fun people and very likable people and had some great experiences. But and I realized, though, after the fact, as I look back and as I started to get older and I'm living my life, and and I decided to become a Christian, I started to realize, like, God, like, how silly were some of the things that I was chasing as a youngster, and that I still chase from time to time. It's like,
but what's their ultimate purpose in your life?
well, that's my
probably where you're
point.
going,
Was
right?
I didn't have any purpose. Everything was unfulfilling. It was fun. It was fun in the moment.
Yeah.
But it's like
fleeting.
after it was over, it was like, what? That wasn't fun, and I don't feel like now it doesn't make me feel good.
Right.
12 hours later, I feel terrible.
Yeah.
So the ultimate goal for me, as I started kind of asking a bunch of questions, I just wanted to know, like, before it's too late, what's this eternity stuff? What is it? What is this eternal perspective people talk about, and how do you even fathom it or discuss it when obviously we can't personally relate to it, because we can live for eternity, but I think a true eternity, I guess, wouldn't have a beginning either. It just has no beginning, no end.
Yeah.
So I couldn't say we're eternal beings because we were born, unless
Well,
that
our
was
physical
always
bodies,
a plan.
right?
Yeah, our spirit could have always existed.
Yeah, I don't know about that side of it, and I don't know. I mean, if it's somewhere that explains it, it hasn't been explained to me. Doesn't mean that it hasn't been, documented somewhere. A little more of that understanding, but I haven't tried to get to that because I'm still trying to, fight the battles that I go through, on this earth.
Right.
Just trying to keep my head straight and my heart straight. Today I've had issues. Friday at work, I had some issues to where, I do feel like, to a degree, that I fight those battles a little bit better, to where it's not necessarily external, but at the same time, my heart is where I've really got to get a good grip to go, okay, is that how Jesus would want you to handle that?
act.
Why are you, okay, maybe you didn't swing on that guy, but man, the feeling you've got going on inside of you right now,
Yeah.
that's what I want to, that's what he wants to take care of. He came to the Pharisees and told them that, it's not that, you're not killing, I don't want you to hate your neighbor. If you got hate in your heart for your brother, it's the same as killing him, as far as I'm concerned. If you're thinking about doing it, you could just say, well, I haven't done it, so I'm good. No, your hate in your heart, that's where we struggle.
Well, the coolest thing, but the one thing that you said there at the beginning was that you know it.
Yeah.
You recognize it, and I think, excuse me, I think that's one of the neater things about being a Christian and having Christ in you. When you have the Holy Spirit in you, He's constantly giving you correction and giving you encouragement and a guidance that we all need as we get off this path that we're supposed to be on, and it's just sometimes the human nature takes over and we all make mistakes. So this Christianity decision, it has nothing to do with this big poof and all of a sudden you're somebody completely different. It is work, and it is a process, and essentially it's us trying to become more like Christ, which is not a bad thing. I mean, and I don't know that when we said this last podcast, I don't understand why people have so much interest in doing stuff that's like hurtful to other people. It just blows my mind.
I mean, you're supposed to struggle in life, because if you're not struggling in life, you don't physically change, you don't spiritually change, you don't mentally change. If there is no struggle, you become a big glop of goo in my mind. Because just take the analogy of weightlifting. As you're weightlifting, as you lift heavier and heavier weights, you're tearing your body down to make it stronger. So same as spiritually, you're trying to burn off. Believe it or not, I heard Jordan Peterson say something like that the other day. It's like you're burning off the bad inside of you. It's a purge. It's a fight. It's a killing. It's a death of the bad. It's the death of the old to make new. I mean, just like, we live here in Kansas, the Flint Hills. They burn that stuff off almost every year. They have a burn off to get that dead undergrowth, the nastiness out of there, so that new
grows back
grass
healthier, right?
can grow back healthier and stronger. And that's the daily, in my mind, a daily struggle for me to try to be a better person. Is I've got to let some of this old nastiness go.
Well, I wish, and I know this didn't happen to me, and what you're describing means it didn't happen to you either. Because I didn't become a Christian until later on in my life, but prior to that, I came from a divorced family, and we kind of moved here to Wichita. And my mom took that late job at night, and I had kind of pretty incredible freedoms as a very, very young man, which I fully took advantage of, and made a lot of decisions that if I had to do over again, I probably wouldn't make. But at the same time, I don't regret any of them. They're all those decisions might be what led me right here, right now.
Most likely.
And so, point is like, if it's not a miraculous change, it's fine. It's just knowing that you the way you're doing it isn't working, and it's like, something has to give in terms of, adjusting. My world had to something had to give in terms of adjusting. To gain purpose. I was a baseball player, and the more I did and the higher level I got, to me the uglier it got, because it became more about money and more about fame and more about notoriety and everybody jockeying for position, and it lost it. But when I was like an A-ball player, hanging out with those guys, we spent every minute together, and nobody had an agenda. It was just like, we're gonna play baseball, and even through the suck, we just were there for each other, and that to me was one of the gleaning things I realized in baseball. Like, it's kind of reminiscent of the way the world works, is where the higher people get to, and the more money they make, the more likely they are to be entrapped by the society's perspective of or secular perspective of what really matters, and I got lost in a lot of that stuff, not just from a partying youngster, but also from a major league baseball player. There's a lot of obstacles everywhere along the way. I could tell you stories about growth and hardships and things like that, but inevitably it led me right here.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be difficult in those arenas, and I have no clue whatsoever. But outside looking in, if you were somebody, because you see a lot of people on TV, look at Michael Jordan. He's still, how many years has he been retired? I mean, people are still holding him up on a pedestal, and to be able to live that would be difficult to not succumb to. You're right. I am the greatest son of a gun that's ever lived, and to believe your own press and your own hype. That's an experience that a majority of us people will not ever experience, and it's probably a really good thing that we don't.
But it's not all positive either.
It's not all positive, but you sure do get a lot of the good. I mean, when you got your fans, you have your fans. When you have the people that don't like you, they don't like you. But when you're lifted up like that, that's pretty difficult probably. But most people don't have that.
Well, and if you just go back, I know you're a big Elvis Presley fan.
Huge.
You know, he was obviously lifted up. And how did
And
that
it
treat
tore
him? You
it
know,
tore him down.
Michael Jackson and
Yeah.
Kurt Cobain with you
Mm-hmm.
know, and you can go on and on and on about about these famous people who were up on a pedestal. And they just couldn't handle it, and it just not the way we're meant to be. We're not meant to be idolized and worshipped.
No.
We're meant to worship.
We're meant to worship.
And so God is the one that needs to be up there on that pedestal.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're the one that's up there, you know, it's likely that you probably got a good chance of falling, especially if you don't put God up there with you, or at least a higher pedestal.
I
than
think that's what a lot of people have problems with, Brad, is the fact that they have an issue with worshiping a being in their mind that, again, allows all this negativity in the world. But because they're too self-centered, they're too self-aware, and they want to be lifted. They want people to recognize them, or they want to be, told you can do whatever you want to do. It's whatever makes you happy.
So it's their truth.
It's their truth. And that,
as opposed to the truth.
And their truth, that's what keeps people away from God. And there are pastors and there are evangelists that got stuck in that same thing because they made this church. So it's not, something that Christians can't fall prey to. Self-professed Christians, we may start off in a good spot, but man, when you get caught up in that world and that earthly thing to where, I've got to make this church to where it's 3,000 people. I got to make this church to where we have 1 million followers. I got to do this. I have to do that. I have to do this. And they lose perspective of it's not about you. This church is not you. The church is God. The church is Christ. So as soon as you take that pastoral role to where you think you do, you know what I say matters. No. What are you supposed to be? You're supposed to be a megaphone for the word.
An ambassador of God.
That is it. You are supposed to take that Bible and you're supposed to read it, and you were chosen, hopefully, to be that guy that says, all right, congregation, you're not following me specifically, but I am going to teach you
A Bible-based
message that came from God. It didn't come from me. And then some people lose perspective on that. And then bad things happen.
Well, yeah, bad things happen though, even when you're rolling really good. I think. Well, I just think it's life. I mean, you're gonna experience hardships. You're gonna experience ups. You're gonna experience downs. You're gonna have death. You're gonna have loss. You're gonna have struggle. I mean, you're gonna be fatigued. It's just part of it. And not that I think anybody should like glorify that kind of a thing. But bottom line is you're going to go through it. So if you go through it with a perspective of like, okay, there's something more to what I'm going through than just the face value of it. There's something that God's trying to steer me towards, steer me away from, or tell me, and if you look at that from that perspective, you realize like, okay, I'm a little bit less perturbed over things that happen because I believe that it's God by God's design, and what He allows me to go through inevitably is for good, even though it doesn't seem like it always at face value. In the big picture, there's something good that's going to come from it. Some way God's going to be glorified in the midst of it. And it's funny, but because you said it earlier, is everybody always blames God, and they say, how can this terrible thing happen? Well, because Satan's real too, and that's something that if you're a Christian and you believe that God and Jesus Christ are who they say they are, then you can't not believe in Satan.
I think the biggest issue is, child trafficking, sex trafficking has become on at least the national stage here recently due to the fact of that movie that just came out. I forget the name of that movie that came out. I haven't got to see it. Something about freedom.
Freedom, yeah.
Whatever. But that gentleman who did that, Chris, again, I'm not here to push the movie or anything, obviously, but it just made me think about that. God, a lot of people are saying, so why does that happen? If there was a God, that wouldn't happen. But the point that we need to understand, the perspective that we have to take is, why are there so many hungry people? Why is all this bad stuff going on? God put us here to take care of this place. Adam and Eve are here to stand up and take care of the Garden of Eden. They didn't do that right. We got kicked out, but we're here. So why does this stuff happen? Why aren't we being like this Chris guy? He former CIA guy. He got a team together and he's out there trying to do something. He's trying to fight it. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be the ambassadors. We're supposed to be the people that are fighting these wrongs. We're not fighting the wrongs. We're just sitting back crying and whining about stuff.
Well, I think now, to a degree, I agree with you. On another hand, I say, the one thing that also the Bible talks about is just don't grow weary of doing good. So by doing good, you are fighting it in a really strange way. But it's like so many people are just conformist, and they're just like, I'm going to go do what I want to do because I don't want anybody to tell me what to do. And I'm a big boy, and I can make my own decisions. And that pride gets in the way, and it did with me, in a lot of arenas. And the things I used to value and hold on a pedestal is like, I wish I wouldn't have. I wish there's girls that I wish I could go and say sorry to, and there's people in my life that I wish I could go and I wasn't a bully, but that I probably could have treated better, and I want to, I should apologize to. But bottom line is, we're all guilty of wrongdoing, and that's not what Christianity is. It's not a contest to see who can be the most righteous. It's a relationship. It's really a relationship, and it's a all-encompassing relationship, because God can be your father, your king. He can be your friend. He can, he can be all of that stuff,
Yeah, which sounds weird to a lot of people, but it's just having conversation. I mean, you can't have a friend as we walk around this earth. You can't say someone's your friend if you don't ever have conversations with them.
My point exactly.
Right?
It's a relationship, and that's what Christianity is. It's not really trying hard to do the right thing to earn favor.
Not going to.
It's more about doing the right thing because God's pleased. It's not for our favor.
Yeah.
It's for Him. It's for Him to feel good about His creation. And our job, I wouldn't call it a job, but I think our responsibility in our world is to tell people that good news. It's not bad news. It's good news. No. It's eternity in heaven. So, I mean, how's that bad? And the process to get there is just a decision. It's not a bunch of work. And granted, hopefully after you make that decision and bolster that relationship, you start to see some significant changes in your life, especially if you were a heathen like I was.
Yeah, I mean, I can see some of that kick through from time to time. With all of us. I mean, I was having a rough morning this morning, and I felt a lot of anger this morning. I felt a lot of anger on Friday, and it happens. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean it won't happen. But that conflict inside of you, because it does happen, I'm pretty sure you said earlier that the Holy Spirit being inside of you means you really must be a believer, because otherwise you wouldn't give to, that care in the world. I don't care.
Well, didn't it matter to you? Like today, you're angry, right?
Yeah.
How did you react compared to how you would have reacted 20 years ago?
Yeah, it'd
just
been a
look
lot
at it.
Worse.
Absolutely, it would have.
Right.
And so you look at it like that, and I know
take these wins when you get them.
Right, and I have countless experiences in my own world where I react differently, and you know what? Sometimes though, I don't. Yeah. Sometimes I just let it rip.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that's the truth. But I'm not here to be a pretender. I'm not here to tell everybody that to be a Christian means that life is going to be all peaches and cream.
It's not. And I think one of the best examples that's in the Bible of a true Christian, I think some people still have a hard time with it because of the example, but I think it's the great example is David, is King David. He was the chosen by God to be king of Israel. And he had to fight his way to a degree physically as well to get to that position. And But man, he fell short from time to time. But when he did fall short, his repentance was real. He didn't ask in many ways, when he had the kingdom, he didn't ask for God to, don't take the kingdom from me. Don't take this material thing from me. He repented and said, don't take you from me. Don't take your presence from me. That's when he has the heart, the true heart of God, because he wanted to continue that relationship more than anything. Right. Take everything else from me. Just don't take you.
Well, and I saw a movie the other night. Golly, I'm as bad as you are.
Can't be.
Anyways, it was about this guy being inhabited by a demon. I'll think of the movie. And anyways, he was in prison. He'd killed some people, but I start thinking about like the C.S. Lewis books, and there's one that he wrote called the Screw Tape Letters. And in the Screw Tape Letters, it's Screw Tape and Wormwood are these two demons, and one's trying to teach the other how to deceive this boy who is continually growing closer to Christ. And the or I think it's Screw Tape is the big one, and trying to convince Wormwood that this, if you do this to him, using his own temptations against him to try to taunt him or lure him away from what they called the enemy, which was God, of course, because they're demons. But the point is like, and I wanted to make is like, as you're a Christian and you believe that Jesus Christ was who he said he is, it's probably not always going to be easy, because now Satan has a reason to come after you.
Right.
Where before he didn't, so now's where you got to, you realize I'm still going to go through these struggles, but the one thing is you're going to be tempted by Satan, but God is going to give you the ability to overcome whatever it is, and he's going to fight those battles for you. So you kind of start, you learn like, I don't have to necessarily be the one to fight all the time. I just pray about it and trust that God's going to take care of it, and he does. I mean, it's amazing as I look back, and if you just take that initiative instead of reacting like we want to or what have you, it's pretty amazing. And then we still got to get up and do stuff too. I mean, I'm not saying that you can just pray and poof, it's going to happen, but God will fight your battles.
No, God lets you go through the battles to strengthen you. It goes back to I believe what I was saying earlier. You've got to lift those weights to get stronger. So you have to go through the battles to get stronger. You don't just poof and things are better. No, you got to learn how to get through this, because there's going to be another storm.
Well, I think inevitably the whole way to do it is not to necessarily worry about your own strength as much as just let God. Just God's got it. Yeah. I mean, lean on God and trust him leaning. To trust his strength, and that way in our weakest moments we can still stand up,
because you're not alone, right? You got God lifting you up in a lot of ways. He's holding you there, and if you believe that, you can feel it. I can't tell you the difference. I mean, again, I had the belief, but I wasn't following. I mean, I didn't get it to this degree. I wasn't dug down in there. I was a shallow believer. Yeah, I did believe it, but I didn't have the understanding of Scripture. I didn't have the understanding eternally, like I feel like I'm gaining more and more of in the last several years, last 10 years more specifically. And last week I'm better than I hope today I'm better than I was last week, but sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. But I also understand that if I just lean on myself and I'm like, I'll take care of this, it's going to be bad. It's not going to be right.
Well, there's a verse in the Old Testament, and I can't point to the exact verse, but we can definitely post it. Whereas it talks about God refining us, and if you think about the word refine, it generally refers to like metals, like especially nice metals, like gold, like silver.
Yeah.
And as you refine silver or gold, you're taking out the impurities,
burning those away.
Yeah, and then it just becomes pure, and particularly silver. If you look at a piece of fine silver, you can see a reflection in there, and I think that inevitably is kind of the ultimate purpose of the trials and tribulations that we go through. That's God. He's refining us. like a fine metal, because he's getting rid of the bad stuff, and you're going through this stuff because you have something to learn from it, and inevitably the object is to, to display to people to see Christ in you. That's when you become that refined silver, and now you start to reflect the image of God. And that's the ultimate goal, is when people the people will be enticed by what you have, I think, more so than, offended by it, because it's not bad. It's good. And that's where I think a lot of people, I myself was a little scared before I became a Christian, because it's like, golly, this is a different deal, and it's something I don't understand. And I kind of just jumped in, once I did what I needed to do to believe it. And then it, it's been a grind ever since, to be honest with you.
It's hard for a lot of people to, the stuff, especially as you do as a kid, as you go when you're by yourself or when you're with your friends, you stop and think about some of that stuff. If your parents knew what you were doing, what do you think they would say?
Well, I probably wouldn't be super happy.
Right. So, that's where a lot of people go, well, if I have to believe in this God, he ain't going to be real happy with what I do and what I think,
especially
all the time.
Because he's there all the time.
He's there all the time. So you're telling me this guy has been seeing all this stuff that I've been doing? How then he can't love me?
Right.
That's where people get hung up on. There's like, no, he can't truly love me because you don't know how bad of a drug addict I am. You don't know how bad of a porn addiction I have. You don't know how bad I have this, that, or whatever in the world it is. But you know what? When you have a true friend, when you have a true father that you can go to and say, man, I need your help. I can't do this anymore, and I want to quit. I don't want this anymore. So you've got somebody to lean on. Just put it in that perspective, Hey, I need your help, Brad. I can't do this myself. Can you please be my guy that I go to and say, I'm starting to feel this way again. Can you talk me off the ledge?
Are you portraying me as Christ right now?
No, I am not. I was just saying.
Just say, because I'm gonna suck at it.
But as a friend, if you just take it on a relationship basis, most people can understand. Most people have parents. Not all of us. Most of us had parents to grow up with, and I get not all of us had. But maybe have a friend. I hope you do. That you can go to and share things with. But the nice thing about God is he's like, you're forgiven. You don't have to have the shame when you come to tell me something, when you want to confess, because that's what you're doing. You're just confessing. You're saying it to yourself. You're saying it out loud. You're saying, God, I am this. I want to quit being this.
Yeah, because God knows already.
It's already there.
He already knows, so he's forgiving you before you ever ask for forgiveness. The difference in asking is the humility factor.
You have to.
It's realizing that I need God in my life, because on my own I keep messing it up.
That exactly.
Yeah, and so that's really what I wanted to share, Troy, more than anything, is just kind of what that is and how to go about it. It's just a simple prayer. It's just, you ask God into your life, and in the midst of it, you kind of put yourself on the back burner, and you realize, like, this is free, and all I got to do is ask him in and believe that he is who he said he was, and you just move forward from there, and you grow it, and you have this little thing in you that all of a sudden starts to kind of teach you the way to go about your business.
Yeah, it's it's as simple as that, but then it also becomes more than that. So we're not saying that's it. We're also saying to be a true believer, most people are going to be able to start to see it.
Typically, but I just think, though, it's starting somewhere.
It's simple.
Obviously, I never became a Christian thinking I'm gonna jump into this and I'm never gonna sin again.
Right.
Because I think that's an unrealistic expectation. But I think you start to realize, like, okay, I don't want to sin. I don't want to, because every time I do, it hurts. It hurts God. It hurts the person that I trust in. And it's like your wife or anybody for that matter. If I do something wrong that's hurtful, harmful to them, it also hurts me, because because I see them hurt. So if you understand like that from that perspective is now I have Christ in me. So every time that's where your body, a temple comes in, is like every time I do something that hurts God, I mean, it hurts me too. And it bothers me, and I think that's the difference is it didn't used to bother me. I used to just be, I'm going to have fun. I wake up the next day. I was like, yeah, that was fun, but it doesn't feel very good right now.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to clarify that that's the beginning. Just, you can say it audibly, you can say it internally, you can be around people when you do it, but just just open yourself up and accept it is ultimately what the prayer is asking for. It's just, I know you're there. And I'm letting, you in, and I'm hoping, that, your forgiveness will, start healing me. I mean, you're wanting all this healing, you're wanting this. So you don't just say a prayer and then you go back to your normal life and then you just keep on doing all that bad stuff,
No, because there's a process that starts working in you.
Yeah. So you've got to put some work in, and it's not works in the fact that you're earning anything, but at the same time, if you're going to profess, it's going to make you change. And if you're a true believer, and it's not because it's just because it's going to 100% sit there and say that prayer from your heart, you're going to change. You're going to want to change. And it might be difficult. It's not going to be overnight. Like you said, it may take a minute. It may take 2-3 weeks. It may whatever, but you're going to put down that needle. You're going to quit looking at that stuff on the internet. And it's difficult. Sometimes you may fall and you may, need to be picked back up, and that's okay, is what I'm trying to say. That's okay. Because I think a lot of people get caught up in the fact that, well, I said that prayer, but I'm still doing my drugs, or I'm still doing this, It's okay, but, get back into the Word, get into a church, get into a small group, find somebody else that has that same mindset. Don't stick around those same friends. Because if you stick around those same friends, you just get right back into that same bubble, and you can't get out of it.
Well, it goes back to feeding your spirit versus feeding your flesh, and one thing that's for sure, and God makes this promise in the Bible, is that once you decide to ask Him into your heart, He's going to finish His work in you. Yeah. So you can't continue inevitably to be who you are if it's separating you from God. He's going to find creative ways to get your attention, and it's probably not always going to be in a way that you like, but inevitably He means good, and He wants us. No. And goes back to our souls. We all aren't. We're not souls with bodies.
Yeah.
We're bodies with souls, and the souls are going to go on for eternity in heaven or in hell. And how valuable is your soul if Satan and God are both vying for it? They're both fighting for it. So, thinking about that, and if you start to look at that in like real life perspective and seeing things in a different way from a good versus evil perspective, it takes on a different connotation.
I think our souls is what drives our cravings in a lot of ways, because if you feed your soul nothing but negativity and nastiness, your soul is negativity and nastiness. If it's the two wolves, which one do you feed? That's the one that's going to win. However you want to say it, your soul is a living thing. It's there. And if you're just constantly looking at negative stuff, if you're just looking at all the bad, man, you just keep craving that. So you got to make that change. You have to be on offense. You've got to start doing stuff. You can't just sit around and go, okay, I'm a believer now. I wonder what's going to happen.
Well, you know what I think inevitably it leads to is that being a Christian isn't about what you can get. It's about what you can give. And so many people in this world are takers, and they're taking drugs, or they're taking alcohol, or they're taking whatever, and gimme. And as you become a Christian, you realize, it's really more about giving. It's about helping your fellow man. It's about, doing something because God's going to be pleased. And the giving part of it is the hardest part, but it also starts to become pretty natural if you just practice it, like you were saying. And I think one more point I want to make is, when you accept God into your life, you ask Christ into your heart. Yeah. It's also called the circumcision of the heart.
Yeah.
Which means that old heart that you had, that hard heart that was bitter and angry and mad, mad at the world, all of a sudden starts to become like more compassionate to people and their feelings and the way they're dealing with things, and you start to want to help and want to give, as opposed to always looking for a way to take and obviously becoming a Christian's in a way taking, because you're protecting your investment, so to speak, and eternity in heaven is a lot better than eternity in hell. So if you look at it just from that simple perspective, I mean, it makes sense, versus the other option.
Yeah, and part of that giving, though, is to also get out there and make disciples, and hopefully give them the gift of that perspective as well. Right. And having these conversations like this, for those, I think a lot of people that do watch these at the moment are probably believers, but I also know that people watch this that are not.
Yeah.
And that's your choice. And we, I know Brad and I both, to a degree, if you can say, we've probably prayed about that in some way or another, internally, externally, talked about it, had conversations about it. And if you ever want to have conversations one-on-one, Brad's a good guy to talk to. I'll talk to you and give you a little even more detail probably about our own experiences and what we will hear time-wise, and we'll invest as much time into you as we can if that's what you want. Because if somebody came to us and said, I want to know more about what you guys are talking about, would you probably spend more time talking about it, right?
You bet I would.
That's ultimately what we want. So it's not easy. It's not hard either. That's the crazy thing. I mean, it's not easy in the fact that we fight stuff daily because there's so much negativity out there. So this world makes it hard, and I don't believe it's God doing any of it. God allowed a lot of stuff. God allows us to choose things. So going back to that, if we have the experience of God and we have the love of our brothers, we will want to keep things bad from happening in the world. And we do have the ability to help others in your own community. Start there. If you see a homeless person, give them a sandwich. And I know a lot of those people don't want help. A lot of those people are there because they choose to be, but a lot of people are not. And that's difficult, having conversations that way. I mean, that's something, instead of just complaining, if there was a God, I wouldn't have any homeless. And man has made this homeless environment. And we've made a lot of this stuff because of the evil that's on this earth. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but what I'm saying is it's not God's fault. It's probably our fault.
Well, I mean,
what I'm saying.
Right. I mean, like I said a minute ago, it's like all these people that, before I was a Christian that I associated with, I never meant anybody harm. I bet I harmed some people, though, in the process of trying to get what I wanted, and use your imagination as to what that was. But the bottom line is, as I've become a Christian, I think I just kind of I've developed more compassion for other people. When somebody's struggling, I mean, it hurts, especially when it's, somebody who's near and dear to you. So, the difference is just, you become a little less of a taker, a little more of a giver. You start to realize there's different purpose for life than just having fun, and you start to see things from an eternal perspective as opposed to just, being born and dying 80 years later or whatever. And that just makes more sense when you start to look at all the things you do throughout the course of your life, and, you strive to become a certain way or a certain thing. And why?
Yeah.
If it's just going to go away when you die, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. The ultimate, where we ought to be, and it's a biblical statement. I've heard it many, many times. Ultimately, all Jesus wants from us is our repentance and our faith. There's nothing else that we can do. There are no works on this earth that we could do to gain that love of God, the forgiveness of sins. He wants our repentance and he wants our faith. And through that, as we change, works do happen.
Yeah.
Because we're better people.
Right.
Hopefully.
And we've talked a lot, and the conversation is not meant to overwhelm or make anybody confused. It's more along the lines of like, it's really not that big of a overwhelming thing in terms of a decision. It just brings purpose to everything that you do from a day-to-day basis. And without beating it up, I mean, that's a decision I made, 30 years ago, and it's probably the best decision I've ever made.
Right.
And because I walk through every day feeling like, there's something that I need to do, to contribute.
Yeah.
I want to be a contributor. I don't want to just be a taker. I don't want to just sit in the privacy of my own home and shelter myself. And every time somebody knocks on the door, I freak out. We're called to be a community.
Yeah, which we've become less of one as technology has gotten better and better. I remember when we were kids, somebody come knocking on the door, you'd go answer it and see who the heck it was.
Excited to answer.
Somebody called you on the phone, you pick the phone up and go, "Hello, who's this?"
Somebody
but
actually
now
wants to
we
talk
look at
to
our
you.
phone and go, "Oh, I'm not answering
Right.
that." You look at your Ring, camera on your phone and go, "Shh, be quiet.
Yeah.
Somebody's at the front door."
Somebody's at the door, hit the deck. So, anyways, it's what it is. So, that's a topic that I wanted to get out there, because I was confused as someone who was curious early on in my life. I didn't know the steps, and that's it. I mean, you just decide Christ was who He said He was and did what He said He was going to do, and
Right.
you learn to trust Him, and period. That's it.
Yep, I think
Ask
so.
Him, and
I mean, it is as simple as that, and it's difficult to walk on this earth with so many unbelievers at times, but not. I mean, I wear shirts like this on a regular basis. I don't just wear them for the podcast, or I don't just wear Christian church clothes to church and things like that. I wear my faith and my belief, right there. It's a badge, if you will. Not just to throw it in somebody's face, but I'm also not ashamed of it, not embarrassed by it. So it can be difficult when you start, because, you're in a community probably with a lot of other non-believers, but we're saying it's okay, and you can become a believer pretty easy. Just say, please.
Inevitably, hopefully, maybe you can start to influence those other people.
Yeah.
So
That's what we want. All right.
I'm going to ding the bell.
You going to ding the bell? Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't get hit by a hummingbird.
No, we got some close calls, but I think we made it. All right. Life and grace.
Thanks, guys.